the workshop about imposter syndrome. So I'm Rebecca Amin of Rebecca Amin Coaching, and my job is really to help mainly parents, but not exclusively, but to help people who feel stuck in their careers. And I work with them through one-to-one and group coaching to figure out what next in their career, to get back to being happy, and to get an action plan to make that happen. But today I'm talking about imposter syndrome. Now, before I sort of go into my tips and sort of how to recognise it, what is imposter syndrome? So imposter syndrome is more than just worrying that you're not quite good enough for your job. Most people would describe it as a real nagging worry that they don't deserve the job they're in, that you're going to be outed in some way as a fraud, and that you're just not good enough for many areas of your job. So imposter syndrome is not unique to any one type of person. It doesn't go away the more senior or the more experienced that you get, and nobody really is immune from it. It can affect anybody. It's something that many of us will face in our careers at some point, and it has actually been defined. So I'm going to read out the definition of imposter syndrome from the California Institute of Technology Counseling Center. Their definition is that it is a collection of feelings of inadequacy that persist even in the face of information that indicates that the opposite is true. It is experienced internally as chronic self-doubt and feelings of intellectual fraudulence. So that's the very sort of scientific description of imposter syndrome. It's really common. It affects about 70% of individuals at some point within their careers. And whilst we don't know the sort of cause, we can do things to keep those feelings in check. And that's what I want to talk about today. So the key really is to recognise those unhelpful thoughts, to question their validity, and to gradually rein them in. So today, like I say, I will give you a sort of snapshot of some common traits and some tips about how to overcome each one of those. So here's some things that you might recognise in yourself if you are suffering from imposter syndrome. So one big thing is around difficulty accepting praise. Often people with imposter syndrome might say that they're where they are because they got lucky, or might even think that they were just right place, right time. They might even think that somebody who's put them in that position, it was simply an error of judgment on that employer's part and they've just ended up there because of that. And they can really struggle to believe that they're deserving of the success that they have. And of course, the problem with that, not only do those feelings, they're difficult to deal with, but it may also result in you hesitating to put yourself forward for your next steps in your career or new opportunities. So because you would, sort of not think that you deserve them. So a solution to sort of help with that really is doing things to recognise and celebrate your success. So remember that you've come this far because you've earned it. It didn't happen by accident. You did some stuff to get you where you are, to get the success that you have. So think about how far you've come. Think about recalling projects, looking at feedback that tells you why you are where you are. What have you done to put you in that spot? And make notes of those achievements and those successes, and maybe even try and make that a regular thing, weekly or monthly, for example. You could reflect back on your achievements and successes and attribute that success to yourself. Another sign of imposter syndrome might be that you have become what I would call a workplace hero, that you feel that you need to be the best at everything at all times. Essentially, you're a perfectionist. And the problem with that is that when you don't meet your own impossibly high standards, that you are, when you don't meet them, you perceive that you're failing, which essentially perpetuates that cycle of perfectionism and imposter syndrome. So, there is no shame in asking for help. There is no shame in asking for support. So a real thing that can help with that, if you are suffering from this sort of perfectionism relating to imposter syndrome, reach out for support, Feeling less stressed about tasks because of having had that support will increase your confidence about what you're trying to do. So if you don't have a support network in place, if you don't feel you have trusted people that you can go to for certain things, now might be a good time to think about getting that in place. Another sign of imposter syndrome is that you compare yourself to others. So a constant comparison to other people. Now, of course, everyone compares themselves sometimes to others, but when it's excessive, that's when it can become a problem. And that will really start to breed feelings of low self-confidence, potentially even make you feel slightly depressed about things, and sort of using someone else's success as your own benchmark of self-worth can really lead you to believe that there's something wrong with you, something wrong about the way that you do things if you're always comparing yourself. So the solution or tip around this area is recognise when you're making those comparisons. Just try and distract yourself from those unhelpful thoughts. If you are convinced that others are doing things better in some way or differently, you could always look at those situations to see what is it that they do differently. How can I learn from those people if you think it might help build your confidence and your ways of doing things. Have conversations with the people you're comparing yourself to. You might find that actually they have imposter syndrome too. They might give you some really positive feedback about what they're seeing in you. So connect with those people. Don't put them in this sort of place where they're untouchable and amazing and you can never be them. Have the conversations. And also try and have conversations about your goals with your manager or with whoever it is around you that you work with. If you're applying for a new job, for example, and you're doubting yourself and thinking you're not capable of it, ask some people for some feedback. Ask friends, ex-colleagues, whoever you feel appropriate, to just share with you 3 to 5 things that they think are great about you, and that will help refocus on yourself and think about your own abilities. You need to just stay focused on you and not worry about what everybody else is doing. So in terms of overcoming imposter syndrome, as I said at the beginning, it's about self-acceptance. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be sort of a master of everything to be able to be recognised and see yourself as successful. And also just remember, imposter syndrome, really, it's there to protect you. The reason our brains do this to us is that we're trying to protect ourselves and keep ourselves away from what might be a risky situation where the outcome might not be the one that we want. But the key really is to think of it as, acknowledge it. Think about why your brain's doing this to you. Think about worst case scenario. Think about, well, what if my imposter syndrome's right? What might that look like? And what might I do about that if that is the case? So that way you've got a plan for the worst case scenario, but the odds are you're going to come out in a better situation than that worst case and have something to celebrate afterwards. Also, if you can build a library almost of times when you have overcome it. So again, it's probably worth noting down when you're experiencing imposter syndrome, what's it trying to protect you from? What is the worst case that could happen? What can you do or choose to do instead? And then write down what was the outcome of that situation. And the more times or the more frequently you have these examples to refer and reflect back on, the quieter that imposter syndrome will become. So the more times that you can overcome it, the more times that you can sort of acknowledge it, but still do what it is you want to do anyway and gain successes from that, the quieter that sort of nagging doubt or voice will become. And the final thing that I would say is people with imposter syndrome tend to be incredibly successful. They tend to be, sort of good at their jobs. They tend to be people that care. If you didn't care about what you were doing, you wouldn't have it. So having imposter syndrome isn't a bad thing. It's not a poor reflection on you. It's impossible, I think, to totally just remove it. But just try not to let it take over. Consider, like I say, what are the worst things that could happen? Plan for the worst, and the odds are you will come out the other side of whatever the situation is better than you thought you might have done, and you'll really be able to sort of show imposter syndrome that it was wrong. So they are my top tips. This is a very quick and short workshop. I could have talked about this all day. Now, I'm not sure if we have any questions today or not. I haven't seen any pop up, but if you do want to talk more about this, or if you want to come over to our stand, so Rebecca Amin Coaching, and I'm collaborating today with Emma Jones of Work Buddy Coaching, you can pop over to our chat, pop over to our stand. We've got loads of freebies that you can download. And of course, really happy to have a chat with anyone around career transition, job search, CVs, or imposter syndrome, as we're talking about today. Caroline Rose Newport has asked, are there any online resources you can recommend? I don't have links specifically today to refer you to, but what I will do is go in the group chat and share some, because I'm worried that not everybody will see if I just put it in this chat here. So let me go into the event chat and I'll share some links and also some books that are worth looking at as well that I can recommend. And Caroline, I'll put that in the group chat room after this workshop has closed down, because I'm conscious it's going to close in a few minutes. And just in case you don't get to see that or other people don't get to, I'll pop it in the event chat. You're interested in the returners resources. Great. So Martha said that she's interested. So returners resources, if you go to our stand, Rebecca Amin Coaching and Work Buddy Coaching in the exhibit hall, and you can see that there's lots of downloads in there. There's a Flex directory, there's a career change checklist. So do feel free to pop into our stand to download those resources, Martha. And Sonia says, thank you, good reminder. Thank you, Sonia. It's high level today because we only have the 15-minute slot, but hopefully those things were good reminders, as you say, Sonia, and helpful to some people. But like I say, if this is a topic you want to spend a bit more time thinking or talking about, or might even need some coaching on, we're here to help you with that. So feel free to reach out to us today. Thank you for listening, everybody. I hope that was helpful. If there's any more questions, I'm really happy to answer them. I'll leave the chat open just for a couple more minutes. But like I say, do come over and say hello to us today and download everything. And the same with everybody else's stands. I know there's a lot of exhibitors here today that have got lots of free stuff. So fill up your swag bag and download as much as you can, because I think you'll come away with a lot today. Great. Well, thank you, everybody. I'm going to close this down now because I think we are done for questions. We're getting some thank yous. Great. Thank you, everyone that listened. I think we had about 52 people on. So really, really thank you for popping in and listening today, and hope to see you later in the day within the stand, or if anyone wants a video chat, we are around as well. Thank you, everybody. Bye.